What's up guys, NerfNerd here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over how much it actually costs to modify blasters. So if you're a nerfer and you are looking into getting into the modding game but you have no idea how to start, this is kind of like a basic overview of really what the costs are compared to just buying it from, I don't know, like Kmart or something like that. The reason why people would mod nowadays, I would say, is because they either don't know about awesome websites like Out of Darts, Frontline Foam, Blastertech, things like that, or they want to try and do it for cheaper. I started out modding and then I found out about these sites and now I do it as a hobby, but I also like to get my hands on some blasters that I could never get up to that high performance. So in how much it actually costs to mod blasters, it depends on what we're talking about, whether we're talking about flywheel blasters, talking about AEGs or just springers. For flywheel blasters, you'd need positive and negative wires, you need switches, you need connectors for your LiPo batteries, you need solder, flywheel cages are optional, flywheels are optional, you need new motors, you need heat shrink, you need something to melt the heat shrink like a lighter, you need pliers, you need knives, you need the soldering iron, and you often need a hot glue gun to glue in the switch in place. Normally if you get a flywheel blaster off the shelf, you can get one for about 30 bucks roughly, I'd say. This one from memory was 30 or 40. This one you can see I've changed out the motors, rewired it, I put in a LiPo, the LiPo connector, the switch, flywheels, I didn't worry about the flywheel cage, and the motors. So in terms of wires, I just bought like a bulk pack for 25 bucks and I've got tons of wires, so I don't need any more of that. 2S LiPo will run you normally about 25 bucks. If you get a 4S, they're normally about 40. Flywheels will normally cost you about 30 bucks for decent flywheels. Soldering wire, you can get that for a few dollars. Heat shrink, same thing, a few dollars. The XT60 connectors will normally come in the pack with your LiPo, so that's included in there. Flywheels, it depends on what kind you get and where you get them from, but normally I'd say a safe bet for these ones I've got, these are MTB Rhino, they're normally under 30 bucks. The switch normally be about 5, and it depends on if you want to get a flywheel cage or not. I normally don't bother, but if you want to get a flywheel cage, they're around, I think, 25 bucks. So all up, if you want to go all out and change out everything, you're looking at about, evening it out, I would say, if you do multiple blasters and you just get the bare minimum of wires and soldering that you need, you're looking at about I'd say about 115 bucks just in parts alone, and then you got to buy the blaster and however much that is on top of that. So you're looking at about under 150 for a flywheel, decent performing flywheel blaster. Launching full darts, you'd normally get about 120 to 140 FPS. If you actually swap out the cage, you could probably get it to like 150 if you get high crash flywheels. But still, for 150, there are a lot of other options that you can get from places like Blastertech and Out of Darts that would probably be cheaper, and also you don't have to worry about modding it. Depends on where you live as well. I can't get a lot of blasters from Frontline Foam, which I wanted to because they're in the USA. I'm in Australia, so I normally get most of my blasters from Blastertech. But even then, you can get a Worker Nightingale for like 100 bucks, and then you just have to buy the battery, and you can get a full auto sidearm pistol performing just under, I'd say, 120 FPS for pretty much the same price as you could get one of these for. But again, you would have to buy proprietary magazines. Really, the only other flywheel options they've got out at the moment is the Worker Phoenix, which is about 200, which shoots about 150 FPS, and it has 3 sets of flywheels. You can get pretty close to this with just one set. So there are often, I find, instead of buying flywheel blasters, unless they're a dedicated sidearm roll, you're normally better off modding them yourself, but again, it's time and the know-how to do it. Now, AEGs are interesting. So they're basically electronic spring blasters. So they're in the middle. They're not quite flywheels. They're not fully electric. They use the spring and an electric motor to power the spring, which is why I think a lot of people like them, because they're very cool, because they almost give you a recoil-like feel. The most famous example would be the Nerf Stampede. It's pretty much the OG AEG blaster. As you can see, it's electric, and the electric motor pulls the spring and will launch a dart. So they're kind of in the middle for price range. Normally you won't have to buy a motor for these. You can use the standard motor. Sometimes you will, but the motors aren't really that expensive. This was like 5 bucks. In terms of materials, you might need a switch, which is a few bucks. Soldering wire, a few bucks. Wires, depends on what you get, normally not too expensive. And a LiPo, which is if you get the 2S is 25, and then you just need some heat shrink and a knife that you'd need, and a pair of pliers, and obviously the connector. So in terms of price, for the electric parts, it's a lot cheaper than you would get for the flywheel blaster. But you also have to remember, if you want to put an upgraded spring in, and a catch spring, and maybe even some foam padding, a new O-ring, and some lube. I have found a Stampede spring that comes with lube, with a new catch spring, with an O-ring, for about 20 bucks, which really is not all that bad considering. So you're looking around about, I wouldn't say any more than 70 bucks to do an AEG mod, to modify one. But again, it's the cost of blaster, so it depends on how much you can get a secondhand Stampede or something like that. But Stampedes are normally really easy to find. There's heaps of them laying around. You could probably pick one up for like 30 bucks. So you could get this for under 100 bucks for all the parts and the blaster itself. So you could save about 50 bucks instead of a flywheel. But you won't get as high performance though. You will get, it depends on what battery you do it on. I'm running this on a 3S. On a 2S, I'd say it's probably like 4 darts per second rate of fire. But I think it's more so the cool factor that it almost has recoil in a way. In terms of how hard it is, AEGs are a fair bit harder to do, but I do have full detailed tutorials on my channel how to modify a Stampede. This also shoots about 85 feet per second, whereas the other ones you could probably get them up, like I said, about 120 to 140. Also, this has the advantage of being stealthy. A slight delay, you'll fire, and then there won't be any wind down time like the flywheel. But there are lots of great AEG blasters that you can buy from different sites. It depends on how much money you want to spend. The pinnacle of AEG blaster at the moment is the Sweetheart Storm, but again, that's like $850. So, yeah, I don't think most people are going to be buying that unless you're seriously into Nerf, in which case, you know, you probably don't even need to be watching my video. The Sweetheart Storm is pretty much a Stampede. It takes short darts. It's completely metal. It fires about 7 or 8 darts per second, and it can hit 300 FPS. It's basically a Stampede, but better in every single way. But again, do you want to spend that money? It's up to you. There are other blasters, like the Colonel Wasp, that's a bit cheaper. Or there's another one that can't remember the name of off the top of my head, that you can grab for around 200. But again, that would shoot about 120 feet per second, and have about the same fire rate as this blaster here. And they do use proprietary magazines. Again, the advantage for modding both blasters is, if you want to get one of these for cheaper than a company selling it for brand new, you can do it yourself. For example, Nerf sells the Pro Strife, which I think is $150, and I can't even get access to it because I'm in Australia, so this would be cheaper. And lastly, the last ones we're talking about are just basic springers. So whether it be like a Retaliator, a Raider, a Tri-Strike, the reason why you'd modify it yourself is because instead of buying something like the Dart Zone Pro blasters or something along those lines, you could get something, you could probably get away with modifying one of your own and get it close-ish to their performance. Normally you can bring up blasters by about between 10 and 20 FPS from stock by modifying them. Pretty much all the same with springers. You take it apart, you take out the plunger tube, you bash out the air restrictor, you put a new O-ring, you lubricate it, you put a better spring, and you chuck it back together. With the Ultra Ferro that I modified, when I got that, it was shooting about 75 feet per second. I chucked a spring in it, removed the air restrictor, lubricated it, new O-ring, and now it's hitting up to 105 feet per second. So that's a 30 FPS gain. For most people, I would say the easiest and best option is just modify your old springers and kind of bring them up around the 90 feet per second range, and that will be plenty fun enough. So should you really spend the money to modify blasters? In my case, yes, definitely, because I find it lots of fun. I've had lots of fun, and it's just cool to work on something and know that it's your own and it's unique and you've done it a specific way how you like it. Like with this Stampede, even though I've got the Worker Kunlun, this is probably more fun for me and more of my own because I've spent a lot of time on it, I've worked on it, and it does what I want it to do, and it's really cool. The blaster means a lot to me, more so than one that I've just bought and chucked together and now I use. But those are all decisions that you guys will have to make. I hope I was able to help you out in that. If you guys want to see any more mod tutorials on a specific blaster or a flywheel blaster, let me know down in the comments. And thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.